Hi there, I'm Robert Benincasa. I do computer-assisted reporting here at NPR, and I am a lecturer at Georgetown University's master's degree program for journalism. We're here in one of NPR's fantastic conference rooms to talk about computer-assisted reporting. Computer-assisted reporting, what we normally mean by that term is using data analysis to help tell a story, to help inform a piece of journalism, a news story, or a project. And when we talk about data, what we're talking about is information that's highly structured, that follows a known structure, and that can be read by software, computer software like spreadsheet program, a database program, or statistical software. For example, here's a simple spreadsheet. It's a list of all of the counties in the United States, about 3,100 of them. And for each county, it tells you the population, how many are Hispanic, how many are white, black, and Asian, that sort of thing. A very common data file, but an example of the kind of data that we use in computer-assisted reporting. Again, very highly structured and follows a pattern that's well documented. So our goal in computer-assisted reporting is to find trends and associations in data that matter and that are in the public interest to report. Okay, and let's go right to an example of that. Earlier this year, the issue of unintended acceleration in cars was very much in the news. Most of that news surrounded Toyota. Toyota had a lot of complaints about cars that apparently or were said to have been taking off by themselves. And there were a number of deaths linked to this. So we went to the federal government, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and we got 15,000 records of complaints about unintended acceleration. Of course, there were a lot in there about Toyota, but Toyota sells a lot of cars. So what we needed to do was look at this data in a way that it was standardized, where we took the number of complaints for a particular vehicle manufacturer in a particular year, and we divided it by the number of cars they sold so that we would be adjusting for market share. So what you're seeing here is a spreadsheet of those complaints. And the complaints refer not only to Toyotas, but to a number of other manufacturers. And then we also have a spreadsheet of sales figures by model year and by manufacturer. So what we did was a data mashup where we took the complaints and we divided it by the sales figures for that year. What we found out was that complaints about unintended acceleration affected other automakers as well, and they did so sometimes in a way that was disproportionate to their market share. And so what we did was we went on the air and we talked about this on All Things Considered, which is NPR's afternoon magazine show. And on the web, we put an interactive database where the user could go on there and input their model year and their manufacturer and find out about complaints for that particular model year manufacturer in proportion to the market share. Here's an example from 2005. And we go to 2005, we see that Toyota does in fact come to the top. It had 13% of the market share that year and 25% of the complaints. When we look at Ford, also kind of disproportionate. It had 17% of the market share and about 21% of the complaints. So what we did was take a government database and combine it with a commercial database to provide a metric. And we talked about it on the radio, and then we went to the other platform and we gave a data visualization for our users. So that analysis was kind of complicated, but if you're just getting into computer-assisted reporting, your analysis doesn't have to be a complicated project like that one. You can get a database from a government agency and come up with a project that's simple but still tells a good story and still informs the public in a way that's significant and important. So one way to think about how you might do that is think about what your government keeps track of. And governments generally, they keep track of things that they tax. They keep track of things that they inspect, so real estate, restaurants, schools. And they keep track of things that happen, like fires and accidents and such like that. And once you know what your local government or your federal government keeps track of, you'll be able to ask for data. And when you ask for data, you always want electronic data of the type we've been looking at. You never want anything on paper. And when you get that electronic data, you'll be able to start to apply the tools like Microsoft Excel, a spreadsheet, Access, which is a database program. Maybe you have a statistical program like SPSS or SAS. You'll be able to start analyzing that data. So when you actually pick a project, my advice is to learn as much as you possibly can about that database. Let's take a very common example, and that's a database about nursing homes. So you get a database of nursing home inspections, and you start to figure out which nursing homes have the most problems and what kinds of problems they were that were turned up in the inspections. And you do your analysis. But while you're doing that, you need to get on the phone with people who've worked with the data, who understand it, and most importantly, can tell you the weaknesses of the data and things that you sort of should be skeptical about. It may be that that certain variables in the data are unreliable. It may be that 5 or 6 years ago, when the inspections were taking place, for one reason or another, you shouldn't compare that year with this year. So the point is, get under the hood of the data, talk to people who have used it before and who really understand it. So computer-assisted reporting can find hidden information that you can put out there and serve the public. But you have to be aware that every database that you're going to get is going to have errors in it, and it's going to have weaknesses. So my advice to you is find out what those weaknesses are, and don't oversell your data. Don't say in your story that your data is more powerful than it is, or it explains things that maybe it really doesn't. With that, here are some resources to help you get started in computer-assisted reporting. And also, I recommend you make contact with investigative reporters and editors and the National Institute for Computer-Assisted Reporting. We have a great listserv, and we have a number of people who are on there who are very helpful and will help you through your first project.